Yes, okay. Hey everyone. Yes, we are there. I guess I had to press like two buttons to get a good life. Welcome everyone to my stream for Meet FLUX, for Flux laser cutters. Um, Today you're here for laser cutters and me, of course. I've been having this machine for 6 months now, or yeah, I think 4 months, 6 months, somewhere around that time. You're either here because you're a follower for me, if for making for what I do, I make costumes, or you're here for Meet Flux, where people with different backgrounds show what they do with the laser cutters from Flux. I have a Flux Beambox, and I'm gonna show you today a little bit about how what I've been making with this machine and how you can use it for to make costumes like I do. So for the people that don't know me that much yet from Meet Flux, I'm a cosplayer, Willow Creative from the Netherlands. I make costumes from video games, and cosplay in particular is making costumes that already have a character attached to it, such as a character from movies or video games. Now mainly make those. I make the costumes from video games, so that makes it a lot more defined about which kind of characters I pick. I sometimes do like a character from a show, for example, Pokemon, but Pokemon also has video games, so it's kind of a different overlap with all these things. So this is the first time I'm doing a live stream without any kind of presenter or host. So let's see how that goes. Um, so today I want to show you a little bit about the laser cutter and how I use it. So I have this laser cutter for about 4 or 5 months now, and the main thing I do with it is I cut this kind of foam with it. And this is EVA foam. It's used in costumes a lot, and now most of the times you cut it by hand. And but as you can see, it gets kind of tedious if you have to make a very detailed costume. So the first thing I wanted to do when I got this laser cutter was make one of my all-time favorite costumes from Monster Hunter. In 2019, they showed this armor, and it was really detailed and really cool with all kinds of LEDs. And I was like, oh, I want to make that, but it's got so many details in it. So as soon as I heard I got this laser cutter, I was like, I'm gonna make this because now I can finally do all these details and not mess up. Because if you wanted to do all these with like a scalpel or any kind of knife with on this, it's gonna take you forever, and it's not going to look as clean as the laser cutter makes it. So here you can see I actually cut it into different pieces. You can see the seam lines here to make it, because like the laser cutter can do about 40 by 40, the Beambox laser cutter. And so in order to make all these different shapes and make the most efficient use of the pieces of foam I have, I often cut them up in little pieces so I can glue them back together where it is okay representable to glue. And then like you can also see I layered it on top so to make like an armor effect, so you can like layer extra pieces on top. This is what you usually do by hand, and then all the details I can cut with the laser cutter. Now you do have to make patterns for this, so everything still needs to be drawn, otherwise the computer does not know where to cut it basically. And so I've been doing that most of the time to when I was drawing this armor. I was drawing all those little details in Illustrator, because the laser cutter can work with regular image files, which it can engrave. So if you upload a picture to the laser cutter, you can actually engrave the picture with different depths based on how intense the black and white gradient is, and then it creates an actual like picture in the material you're using. So if you're using wood, it gets really subtle with like different colors of burnt. wood. So if you use a very high intensity on the black areas, for example, it appears very dark. And then like with different grades of intensity, you can get the beautiful engraving effect with different and create an actual picture. So you can also do this on foam, and like based on the intensity you use, it actually engraves deeper into the foam, and you can create like step level effects. And so one of the first things I actually tried, because someone's asking a question about that, is if you can create a depth level effect with a slope, so a bevel. So you can actually use the foam in different angles if you wanted to. Like just like a miter in wood, you can cut foam in different angles to glue them at different angles and create extra effects. Like I actually did that in this piece. As you can see, it is at an angle because I created a slope on it. And so I tried that with the laser cutter. The laser cutter is not suitable for that, unfortunately, because the deeper you burn into the foam, the more it also burns up. So if you've used EVA foam before and you use a hot gun and you've held it on the foam for too long, it starts like bubbling and burning and creating an uneven surface, which is unsuitable to use. So I did get like a slope effect, but it was like all burnt and fiddly and stuff. You can't really use it. The other downside is that if you use this burnt surface, it does not hold the glue very well because like it burns all the foam into a hard surface, and the glue that you use doesn't work with that very well. So that's also one thing about cutting EVA foam pieces. As you can see, I'll show you the sides of this. Um, it kind of it gives a really nice clean cutting edge. I don't know if, yeah, you can't really see it, but it gives a really nice clean cutting edge. But because the laser uses the heat to to cut through it, it also leaves a little bit of a burnt surface. So if you still want to use glue on it, you have to do like a really uh, quick swipe with a piece of sandpaper or with your Dremel real quick, and then the glue will grab immediately. That's also one mistake I made with my first project. I tried cutting a Samus helmet from my free pattern from my website, and I tried gluing the laser cut edges, and it wouldn't hold the glue very well, so it just kind of fell apart. And the other nice thing about cutting EVA foam for cosplay is that it uses very little power. So I think I've used like 10% or 15% for 5 millimeter foam. And if you were to go to a higher density EVA foam, you'll have to use a little bit more power, of course, because it's a higher density versus low density EVA foam. But I think you won't go over 40% of the cutting power to get through a regular piece of foam like 10 millimeter, for example. And I've not actually tried any thicker than 10 millimeter, but the laser cutter can cut up to 80 millimeters of material. Well, the height is 80 millimeters, so you can put an 80 millimeter piece of material in it. And another cool thing about the laser cutter is that if you don't have enough power to get through the material, you can just tell the machine to pass over it like 2 or 3 more times to get the cuts done. So so it will literally copy the same movement over the same edge again until it's completely cut through. So you can do that as many times as you want. So if your material is very thick, you can do that as many times as you want to get the piece cut. I actually need to try a couple. I think I have some 50 millimeter EVA foam with high density, which would be really nice to do with a laser cutter because it's really difficult to cut with a scalpel or with a box cutter because it's just so thick and dense. Yeah, you can cut leather with it. So any kind of natural material, such as leather or paper or wood, for example, is standard. So you can cut that with a laser cutter. If you have like some kind of artificial material, such as acrylic, you can cut with the laser cutter. EVA foam, you can cut with a laser cutter. You got to be a little bit more careful with what kind of material you cut it with. So if you cut any kind of polyester, for example, it will cause some exhaust fumes that you don't want to have. And some of the material can actually hurt like the laser or the mirror or the lens of the laser cutter. But it's really easy to Google like, hey, can I cut this type of material with a laser cutter or not? And so that's really cool. And I've actually done like for my Illidan cosplay, I cut a couple of pieces of fake leather. For fake leather, you also have to be careful. You have to make sure that your fake leather. There's two types of fake leather. There's one with polyester, and there's one based on a different type of polyester. And one of them is able to cut with a laser cutter, and one of them is not. So you have to be careful with that. So the first thing I now want to show you is a live demonstration of how I made one of the pieces for my laser cutter, for my Safi'Jiiva costume for Monster Hunter. And for that I will switch to my desktop. Let me see, swap. Alright, let's go. So this is my 3D app Autodesk Maya. I already use almost all my costumes with this application. So because that's what I went to college for 3D art for video games, and I learned to use this application. Of course, there's many other 3D apps that you could also use. This is a 3D model from Monster Hunter. I grabbed it from the game files basically and imported it into my app, and I scaled it to fit my 3D body scan here. So you can see my 3D body scan here. It's a little bit simplified because then it's easier to calculate, and I cut off a couple pieces so I can work with it easier. Like as you can see, I put my face on it, and it's all like got my measurements, so it makes it very easy to move all my armor over this 3D scan and make it like the same size. So all these pieces, I've already worked on them a lot, so it's a little bit cut off. So all these pieces, I kind of just exported them by hand. So like this, for example, this piece over here. These are two pieces on the chest. They're very simple and flat. And the idea is to make laser cut patterns out of these. So that means that you need to make them into a vector file. Because if you want to cut with a laser cutter and you want to have the cleanest edges, then a vector, the lines from a vector file will give you the best result. And to do that, you can use Photoshop, Illustrator. There's a couple. Inkscape probably also has a couple. There's probably a couple applications out there where you can create vector lines. So what you do is we're gonna export these. So we're gonna export these as an OBJ file, as a regular. OBJ is a 3D model file, is a regular 3D model file, so it's gonna be like the chest decorations. Okay, so now I exported the 3D model file for these two pieces, and we're going to go to Pepakura, which is a 3D model. It imports 3D models and then unfolds them into 2D foldable patterns. So if you ever seen like papercraft statues or papercraft like models like that, it's done with Pepakura. So what you do is you open the 3D model. So I'm gonna find my 3D model here. Import it, select all, okay. This is my 3D model. Now it doesn't have a texture yet, so I'm going to find my texture image. These are the textures from the video game. I'm gonna open them, and there you go. That's my 3D model. We're going to unfold this. It's going to be standard 1 scale because of course we already scaled the armor into the 3D ARP to my own body measurements. So you want to have a 1:1 scale. So it's going to be 1. So what it does is it's going to unfold the 3D model into all kinds of like these loose pieces that you can see correspond on the left with the 3D model, into random pieces that you can glue together when you print them on paper. Like this is the paper size that you see on the right side. Um, so what we want to do is we don't want the flaps because like the flaps that people use to glue the paper models together, we don't need those. So we're going to add the flaps and set them to 0. Now they're going to be gone. And now it's time to manually cut all these pieces up. You can just cut them together. Now what I usually do is you don't really need, you only need one side because it's a perfect mirror. This is already getting a little bit flat. We're going to cut all this. What I do is if I know that it's already kind of flat, I usually give a few cuts at the side until the pattern is almost flat. There's a piece. And now I got one piece ready. You can see a little bit of the cutting edges over there, but it's all unnecessary. And then I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to make it proper. You can see there's a little bit of gaps in between. The nice thing is to make them align a little bit. So this idea I also use for any kind of costume that I don't use the laser cutter for. It's just for the laser cutter, it's an extra step to make it a vector file. So normally I would just print this and cut it by my hand basically. Oh, where did my piece go? There. Here's a piece. So I got two halves. That's good enough for me. And then I'm gonna put all these other pieces away. When you use a Gain 3D model, you're absolutely going to get pieces that you're not going to use. So you can just kind of stack them and put them outside bounds. So I want these two pieces. I want them here. So on my paper. Okay. So now it's on my paper, but I don't want to print this on paper yet because it doesn't have the lines that I need for my laser cutter. If I wanted to use no laser cutter, I would just print it like this and cut it by hand out of foam. But we're going to use this for the laser cutter, so I'm going to export this as a image file. And if you still want to keep the 1:1 scale, it's important to set the resolution at 120 pixels per inch. And then it's going to export an image file of this, what I just unfolded. And we can close Papakura. I don't need this. I don't need the 3D app. Then we're going to Illustrator. So you can use any kind of vector application basically. And let me see where I saved my piece. Okay, here we go. I'm going to import it into Illustrator and draw on the new layers a little bit easier. So now it's time to trace all this. I'm not going to do all these patterns obviously because that's going to take a little bit more time. So I want no fill and I want a black line outline. I'm gonna put this on a lower opacity so I can see it a little bit easier. Opacity 50. Oh no, wrong one. Oh, Illustrator, do you work? %. There we go. And this one goes to 100. Oh, redo. Alright, I'm gonna take my pen tool here on the left and I'm going to start drawing lines. So I got really handy at this already, so I kind of know how the curves already work. So I got the outline for this one. It's not entirely if I wanted to go in a little bit and use my selection tool to select some of the points, and I can adjust them a little bit so it matches a little bit better. It's got so many patterns, I don't usually do this because you don't have to. Nobody's gonna notice if it's a few millimeters off. So we're going to mirror this. Oh, got one too many. Get rid of this one. Mirror. Now I'm going to group these two together so I can merge them. Group. I'm going to go in with my cursor, select the points, Ctrl J will merge the points together. And for this one as well, because these cross over, I'm going to get my pen tool, grab one in the middle, go back to my cursor and delete the extra. Delete the extra anchors that are in here. There we go. Got a nice point. Okay, so now I have my vector, and I'm going to export this as a vector file. Save. Yes. Okay. And then we're going to the laser cutter own software. So this is the software for the laser cutter Beambox from Flux. This software is free, so it comes with your laser cutter. You don't have to pay any monthly fee for it. It just comes with updates. It comes with Wi-Fi connectivity. So what we're going to do is I'm going to open my the pattern I just made. I'm gonna pick the other one because it's already nice, and I already made all the nice decorations I already had in there. And I'm going to disassemble this. Let me see if I can disassemble. Oh no, it's already in two groups. Cool. So I can move them a little bit closer to each other. Nice thing about the laser cutter, it's super precise, so you can just put them right next to each other. And I already have a piece of EVA foam lined up on my laser cutter. So I want to know where that piece of EVA foam is because it doesn't cover the whole area. I used a scrap piece. So I'm going to use the camera on the Beambox, and it's going to grab the camera and move all over the place that I want to look at. As you can see, my camera, the Beambox is moving around, the laser cutter is moving around, it's making pictures of every spot. And I know exactly where my piece of foam is. There we go. Now I know that my piece of foam is already under here is already completely covered, so I can move it down here without having to worry about that. So I know it's lined up here on the left, and I know there's space around here under here, so I don't have to wait for the camera to do everything. That's cool. Now it's ready. I have a couple presets. I'm gonna be make sure to share these presets on my website for EVA foam and the most common costume materials. And basically, what a laser cutter only has two settings. It has a power and a speed setting. So that's it. And right now I use 25% power and 15% speed. And I don't even have to look at them because I can use the preset basically for this kind of idea. So I'm going to click go, and that's it. And it's going to tell me how long it's going to take, 3 minutes. All right, then I'm going to press start. And I'll walk you guys to the laser cutter. And let's see how it works. By the way, this stream is safe, so if you want to watch it back or skip through it later, you can always do that. So this is my 3D printer room. My laser cutter is also here. Here's a window here. So for the exhaust. And that's where it is right now. Look at that! So this is a fully enclosed laser cutter. So if I open it while it's working, it immediately pauses. You can see it over there. Oh, it's a little bright. And now I can continue. There we go. I am using a noise cancellation headset, so the microphone is going to filter out most of the background noise. And but the loudest thing about the thing is basically it's like a really high power ventilator, so that's of course used to get all those fumes out and to make sure all those fumes are extracted outside. So it's not something I would use at night. But then again, a laser cutter is so incredibly fast. Like the pieces I'm printing right now, they only take 3 minutes. So as soon as those are as soon as it is done, you don't really need to run it at night. There's not going to be that many that many things that need to be able to run overnight. I think my longest laser cutting piece was maybe 45 minutes, I think. So that's if you really use the entire build plate and everything has really tiny details, then you keep having to cut that a couple times. Especially with EVA foam, it doesn't use that much power, and you don't have to do multiple rounds. So you only have to do one round of it. So compared to a 3D printer where it takes more than a day for one piece of for your costume, the laser cutter will take only a few minutes. It is really quick. So that's definitely something that I really like about this. The only thing is, yeah, you have to make the patterns, but same as with 3D printing, you also need to make the 3D models. And then I actually like making the patterns for the laser cutter more because it's a lot quicker. You've seen how quick I made that outline, and for that, it makes it really easy to do. And when you make a 3D model, it can take hours to days to make, depending on the detail. And compared to how much detail I've been putting into this armor, the time taken patterning is really low actually. Have you tried stacking multiple pieces to cut? No, I haven't. But you can. So I've been thinking about that too. What if I need like because you can also engrave uh, patterns into a piece of foam. Like for example, I made a fake lute for like music playing a couple weeks ago. And for that, I actually engraved like different patterns into the EVA foam. If you wanted to do that on both sides, you could do that. But you have to, of course, be careful that it is on the same position. Though, like with the camera, you can position it on the same position, but it is going to be a little bit off, so you have to be very minuscule about it. I've made a little bit. I engraved a knife for someone, and it needed to be engraved on both sides, so I had to make sure that knife when I flipped it was on the exact same position, so it wouldn't look a little bit off the middle. You know what I mean? So it is possible, especially with the camera. It makes outlining a lot easier and making sure that it fits out that way. Um, I just heard my laser cutter is done, so I'm gonna walk over there and see how my piece looks like. And then I can use it for my Monster Hunter armor. Let's go. as my piece of foam, I just taped it a little bit because sometimes the exhaust can blow it away. But if your material is slightly heavy, like wood for example, you don't even need to tape it down. For acrylic, you don't need to tape it down either. There we go. So it's got all these little pieces that I'm gonna have to drop out of. It's already falling out a little bit. I'm gonna have little pieces of foam all over the place now. So here's my 2 pieces that I just cut. This took about 3 minutes. So I'm gonna have to pluck all these little pieces out. Unfortunately, I can't reuse any scrap pieces, but what I do like about the laser cutter is that you can line up pieces very carefully and fill the entire piece of foam, so you barely have any remnants, depending on what kind of shape you cut. Especially because the laser cutter, you can cut very close to each other without having to worry about getting into another piece, because the laser cutter is that precise. Here we go, all these little pieces out. There we go. The cool thing is I can use the same outline that I created for this piece. I'll just delete all the details in here. And then I can use the back piece of this. And that's only because I wanted to use 2 different pieces, 2 different types of foam. So one is white foam and the other one is a black foam. It's because the white foam can have leads through. So if I wanted to use the same type of foam, what I would do is I would just use the pieces I've cut out, and instead of cutting them, I would set it to engraving, and in that way I can just engrave like up to about 3 millimeters, for example, 3 millimeter depth in here, and it creates a really nice, beautiful raised pattern. So I did that actually for my friend cosplay, where I didn't glue 2 layers together. I just engraved them really like about 3 millimeters into the foam, and then actually laid over thermoplastic, which in this case I used Tibra. I laid over thermoplastic to get like a pretty metal shine, because when you laser engrave foam, it creates that burnt texture that you don't really want when you want to make a metallic look. Though, of course, if you want the burnt texture, you can play with that too. It creates a very interesting surface detail. So let me show you a little bit about the white foam I use. There we go. So this is the white foam I use. So what I'll do is I'll put this piece in the laser cutter, cut out the outline, and then spray it, glue it to this piece. And then if you have light behind this, you can see the shadow of my hand. It actually shows transparency. So that gives a really cool, almost like a lead glass window effect. And this is the skirt, which I did all the way the same. All of them were laser cut, all these details, and then the white foam was glued behind it, also laser cut. So each scale that you see here basically is 5 pieces, of which 3 were laser cut and glued together. And then LEDs were also put under it, like you can see all the wires behind it. You can see. And then, if I can have the remote. Oh, I think I unplugged the battery. Let me plug that in. There we go. And it gives a really nice shine through effect. This is going to be so cool when this costume is done. I can't wait. I'm very happy with this laser cutter, so I can finally make this costume. And as you can see, there's some eyes over there. Those are going to be glued in after all the paint work is done. Because of course all the black foam is going to be painted into the color of the armor. So it's gonna be crazy, yeah. It's currently like making like a weird rainbow effect, as you can see. It changes color, but I'm going to change that a little bit to the orange color that is actually accurate for this armor. Oops. Here we go. That was my experience with the laser cutter from Flux Beambox so far. So I have the Beambox model. There's three models, like the Beamo, the small one, and it's got the Beambox, which is the middle model, and then you also have the Beambox Pro. And basically, the Beamo is a really simple starter machine. So it's a little bit smaller, but it has the same functionality. It has the same software with it. And then you have the Beambox, which is a little bit bigger, and it has a couple. I think it has a little bit more power, and on top of that, you have the Pro, which is also more bigger and more powerful. Do you have any questions about the laser cutters itself, or maybe the project I'm working on, or maybe something else? Let me know, and I'm going to start packing up a little bit. Yeah, me too. So I'm gonna see if I can grab a picture for you guys to see how this armor looks like when it's from the video game. Well, of course you saw the 3D model. Where's my mouse? There's my mouse. I unplugged it. Alright. Let's see if I can find you guys a picture. I'm so happy I have the laser cutter for this thing, because it's gonna be freaking impossible if I wasn't. So this is the armor I'm making currently. You can see the skirt is already done. I made the helmet for it. The helmet is also a laser cut, but I have a couple other features, of course, to complete it. So I'm basically combining a whole bunch of techniques to get this cosplay finished. So you see, this is the helmet for it. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to put LEDs in it and still be able to see. But I'll probably do like LED work behind it, and then and then uh, and then make it so you can see through it with transparent plastic instead of the white foam, because I can't actually see through the white foam. And the little dragon on top is 3D printed, and then all the horns were like sculpted on top. That's one thing you can't do with a 3D with a laser cutter. I could have 3D printed it, but it would get too heavy if I made all these little details with the 3D printer. Alright, sweat back. Yes. If I have another laser cutter project, I'll still have to think about that. I'm not sure yet. Of course, I can do a whole bunch of little things with it, like engraving logos on phone cases and all that kind of stuff. So I might try that out. And my next project after the Safi'Jiiva one is going to be Garchomp from Pokemon, which doesn't require any laser cutting, I think, so far. I'm gonna have to look into it. And after that, I'm not sure yet. I do want to make Lilith from Diablo 4, and she has a lot of patterns in her outfit. So maybe I can find a way to use laser cutters for those patterns as well. Let's see what else we got. Lilith. It's gonna be cool as well. But I think most of this is going to be 3D printed. I want to make those wings though, it's gonna be cool. There's a couple other Another thing I want to try is like you have like a bunch of Halo characters or like Master Chief and other soldiers, and they also have like a lot of this scales or hexagon pattern in their outfit. And I want to try a little bit of trying to do that on foam or anything else, so I can make like the surface patterns for that. Also, I think this gun could easily be laser cut if I make the gun from foam instead of 3D print. It would be a lot easier to do it from foam, and then I can do all these panels with the laser cutter, make them super crisp and straight. That's one thing that I really like about the laser cutter. It makes everything so incredibly crisp and perfect. It's gonna be very different from doing that by hand. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked this little insight of how I'm making my Safi'Jiiva costume. I'll be uploading this video on my YouTube afterwards, so you can skip through it and see my workflow of how I use the 3D model to create the patterns for it, and how a laser cutter works basically. And I'm going to be uploading the settings that I use for example, EVA foam or PETG acrylic. You can't cut PETG with a laser cutter, I believe. You can cut acrylic with it, and leather for all that kind of stuff. I'm gonna upload that on my website. I'll make sure to link that on my social media, on Instagram stories and Twitter, and so you can visit my website for those details. And thank you so much for joining. I hope that was fun for you and to show a little bit of insight in this. Maybe I'll do a little bit more streaming after this first stream. I usually always do like the 3D modeling streams, but that's just mostly me playing music, and you can see how I create the 3D model. So, but maybe I'll make a more interactive stream as well. Bye bye.